Hello, it's Noel Vortex. First video for a while. Mostly because I've just not really felt like I've had much to talk about recently. And I'm a bit hard pressed for this one. I'm just going to try do my usual thing and chat as long as I can stay semi-cohesive, I guess. So I wanted to just do one of my usual videos where I talk about a subject just off the top of my head. That's how I do it. It's just how I do it. So I wanted to talk about this concept that's been rolling around for, I guess, like over a year now, and probably prior to that even longer, of cancel culture. That is, famous acts being, or people being deplatformed. So it's a few different levels to it, it seems. Like, one is deplatforming speakers from universities based on pressures from student groups and that sort of thing. The other is there's been an example recently, the Star Wars actress, wasn't there, who was basically fired for retweeting some questionable content, I guess. She's a conservative, I guess. I don't know a great deal about that case, but anyway, those are the two like trends of it. So I thought I'd just chat a bit about that and try and at least bring some sort of interesting perspective on it. Though I can't guarantee that. It might just be a rehash of things you've already heard before. It's my personal perspective, basically. So it tends to be, from what I've been seeing in responses to this, is that people either think that, yes, it's the old case of political correctness is going too far and that sort of thing, or there is a complete sort of lack of, people on more so on the left saying that it's being exaggerated, that people are just answering, dealing with consequences of their actions. So this tends to be two, and then obviously most people who just say, you're just somewhere in the middle, centrist Chad right here. Just taking the centrist Chad position. But yeah, there's people in the middle who just sort of think there's probably some degree of truth to the idea that people are being deplatformed and cancelled. One thing I will say is there does seem to be a sort of puritanical streak to a lot of it. Not all of it, though. It depends on. There are cases where there probably is genuine reason for someone to be cancelled or deplatformed, I guess. But just there's a puritanical aspect to it in some respects, like how something someone said on Twitter maybe 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, about 5 years ago maybe, on Twitter. Twitter didn't even exist 20 years ago. 5 years ago on Twitter can get you fired in the present day. That I find generally chilling. Because, I'll be honest, I've said stupid things on Twitter before. Nothing, outrageous, but I've just sort of, I've said things which are questionable on Twitter when I've been in a moment of rage or just had a bad moment or whatever. Like everybody else, really. I doubt it. So yeah, there's this sort of puritanical feeling to a lot of it where, not all of it, but, where people's tweets are being trolled through. In a way, it's sort of, I guess, will put a lot of public figures off even wanting to go on social media, because even though a lot of them are already in the rabbit hole, but it's sort of if your entire career could be ended because of one tweet. But then on the other hand, people say that you should be accountable for your actions, which is true to a degree, but I don't know. It's all a very strange world we live in. And obviously we live in the COVID age for the last year. which has put a strain on everybody. Everyone's sort of going bonkers in isolation. We're living increasingly precariously through our digital devices, so people are sort of, like increasingly just living through that, I guess, which is sad. And I'm no exception. Like, I'm just thinking, apart from working, most of the time I'm just spending on digital media, just not really living, to be honest. I don't want to make this into a subfest about my life, but I'm just spending most of my time on the internet, really. And I think, I don't know. I mean, where I'm in Russia, so the lockdown's not really on anymore properly, which is good in a way. But yeah, I don't know, I'm going off on. I don't know. I mean, it seems like in this information age, I guess it's like a sort of extension of a sort of witch hunt in some respects. I mean, I do think that comedy is probably, people do say that comedy is one of the last bastions of free speech. There's probably something in that, but then also, the comedians in those sort of do benefit from this sort of outcast reputation in some respects. Even though I love the comedians, I love like Dave Chappelle, I love his material. He did that special which was on Netflix, which is dealing very much with these ideas around cancel culture. There's part of that, I think, where he says like the audience today is just rubbish because they just will trawl through, potentially a decade's worth of data to find something on someone, which is a good, it's stupid. I mean, it goes against the entire, I really, in terms of like progressivism, if you're into progressive politics, or if you claim to be progressive, then by definition you want people to progress from one view to the more progressive standpoint. Now, this would be the main point of what I'm saying, I guess, basically. So, I mean, Kevin Hart's a good example, because, I mean, he was basically going to do, I think, wasn't he was going to host some award ceremony, and then because he'd used a homophobic slur in one of his tweets, I think 6 years ago or something, he was basically dropped off that. And then that's just like, I think he even apologised immediately after that was unearthed. But because of something he said 6 years ago, which he wouldn't be an attitude, I don't think, or like a phrase that he'd use today, which cancelled from, and that sort of thing sort of goes against the entire idea of what progressing should be about. If you're going to allow individuals to progress, then you have to make them, let people make mistakes, because human beings are humans. Humans are full of foibles and make mistakes and say stupid things, or, I mean, obviously attitudes change culturally over time, but any culture has to allow people to make mistakes. Obviously there is a degree level of that. Like if someone's being, I don't think, for example, like if Bernie's not alive anymore, but if Bernie Manning was alive, then I don't think we've got any moral obligation to forgive him for his attitudes. But then that's extreme. Like, he was extremely racist. And, I mean, in theory, if he did go back on those views or realise how, like, stupid they were, maybe he would have been worth forgiving in some respects as a figure, but he never did that, obviously, because he was a fat, ignorant comedian, a racist comedian as well. But, I mean, I sort of think that, I mean, it's somewhat different when it comes to, like, Me Too and stuff like that, allegations of a sexual nature, I suppose, because that's just a different kettle of fish. I don't think it's sort of a separate thing, really. But yeah, I don't know. There's like a few rambling thoughts on cancel culture. I mean, I think the press are obviously just lapping it up because it's like clickbait. So they're rolling with it. See, like I saw, it really annoyed me actually. I saw article in Vice recently about Duke Nukem, saying how it's toxic masculinity and like misogynistic piece of trash. Is like, you do know that it's tongue in cheek, right? It's like just sort of playing off tropes of all the 90s action heroes, 80s action heroes, and stuff like that. It's not supposed to be like dead serious. If anyone's played the game, then they realise that. And well, that I mean, when it comes to like things like that, I mean, okay, fair enough, put it under more than light, but I don't know, maybe I've just got nostalgia over Duke Nukem, but I sort of thought it was sort of a bit ridiculous to be having a Vice article going on about like a 90s game, which was actually a really revolutionary game as well, apart from the aggressive attitudes of Duke Nukem maybe, but I mean, fuck. Yeah, it was just an outlet. Like, that character was just, I mean, playing that game didn't make me want to be like a Duke Nukem. I don't think it could be anyway. I can't really pull off his chatty American style, you know, like a British nerdy guy with a beard. It's like the opposite of me, really, not always. But it was just an amusing game which featured pixelated tits. Let's not ramp it up too much about how bad it was, and moral panic and all that. And I guess a lot of this stuff is like, it's sort of has this sort of puritanical moral panic aspect to it in some respects, which I just find is like regressive. It's not, and I guess people would say often, you know, this is a trend amongst the regressive left. I mean, that's true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's all like, with all these things in politics, it's just makes you want to sigh. All the allegations around Marilyn Manson again, I'm saying things like sort of like Me Too thing. And I think with Manson's case, there probably is genuine reasons for it, but I don't really know. I've not really looked into it, to be honest, that much. It's sort of depressing. Life is depressing enough as it is, but I think I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to have a little bit of a ramble about my thoughts on cancel culture. Some part of that, like, aspect of the culture wars. I thought it was interesting to see with the letter that was published by, what was it, the Harper's Letter or something? I can't remember what the name of it was, but I found it interesting that Chomsky actually signed that, because obviously he's a noted anarchist, libertarian socialist, I think he defines himself as. But I found it interesting. I mean, he's been a very staunch defender of free speech for, well, decades, really. And I mean, I sort of stick to his position. I think even if freedom of speech has to be free, otherwise, what's the point of even defining it in those terms? And that's sort of a separate thing. I mean, it's not separate; it's connected to the cancel culture thing, but there is grey there as well, I guess. But well, let's examine it. So I think fundamentally, you have a right to say what you want. You have to also be taken account. You have to be accountable for what you say, though, as well. In some respects, you have to take a sort of responsibility for it. But you shouldn't be gagged from saying certain things. Though in this media-saturated world, essentially you sort of are. Unfortunately, in some respects. Well, not necessarily unfortunately. It depends what medium you're working in. Like if you're a news reporter, went on the news and just started saying the N-word and like saying homophobic slurs, and that's probably not appropriate. Context is king. That's what someone was saying. Like if a comedian tells a joke and does something clever with those tropes and sort of constructs and stereotypes, and there is probably a usage, fair use almost for those words being used. I don't know. So I'm kind of like politically correct. I'm not really into political correctness. Like really, I sort of get off, and sometimes I'm on. Sounds really weird, doesn't it? I mean, I enjoy mediums like stand-up, which sort of take a look at these sort of political correctness tropes and sort of examine them and make fun of them in some respects. I don't know. I've got sort of absurdist sense of humour, so there is that. But rambled for 15 minutes now, so I'll probably leave it at that. I just thought I'd update my Noir Vortex channel because I'm not really posting here for a while. So I just decided to post some ramblings for my 300 and something subscribers. Quite a lot now, actually. Anyway, that'll do, I think. Bye. Like and subscribe if you like it. Leave comments below. Say whatever you want. I don't really care.